Hello, everybody. I'm so delighted to have you join us. I'm Nandini Ranganathan. I'm the Executive Director of CETI, and welcome to our inaugural Enchanted Technology Summer Festival. As part of the festival, we have a whole series of workshops and amazing speakers and conversation stream live, and this is the first one. You'll see it live here, and you'll see it on video soon, edited and captioned, so you can rewatch and share. I wanted to talk a little bit about the festival. You can see a lot more details of the programs, the workshops, the speakers, and it will all end in a show August 21st on our website, CETI.institute, and you can follow us in details on social media, CETI.institute for all of it. This whole thing was made possible with the generous support of the Oregon Community Foundation and by Portland State University, which gave us a beautiful space to host all of this. This is our first time streaming. We hope to continue to do this so that more of you have access to the amazing content and people. But technology, while amazing, is also very glitchy. So we might occasionally have technical difficulties, and bear with us. It will all work out beautifully in the end, and you will hear some amazing talks. So how our talks will go is I'm going to introduce you to the speaker. We will eventually, if there's time, have a sort of moderated chat, post your questions on YouTube. And also, we will continue the conversation for the next couple of days. All our speakers, instructors, community are going to join the CETI Discord and continue this conversation on the Enchanted Tech channel, so join it. If you want to join it and I'm part of it, send email to hello@CETI.institute. With that, I'm going to introduce our first speaker. I'm delighted to introduce Scott Garner, who is a multidisciplinary artist who uses technology, design, craft to create a really cohesive, creative, and critical vision of something magical and impossible. He's also an educator who inspires and supports creative and critical experiments with technologies. You can find more about him at Scott Made This, but I want to say that Scott, I'm delighted to have Scott introduce all of this. He's going to talk about making music once removed and lead you through a series of projects to see his process and resources as how to make these sort of very delightful and impossible and thought-provoking experiments. So with that, post your questions on the chat, join us, retweet on social media, join us on the Discord, and with that, I'll turn it over to Scott. As you can see, streaming is not my first language, and probably never will, but you get to experience that too. So thank you.
Okay, I just added me. I think that was good. I think you did well. Hopefully you can hear me. Hopefully I can hear me. I'm going to do something extremely professional where I pick up my phone that has YouTube on it, and I'm just going to make sure that I can hear me talking to me. That sounds like my voice, so I think it's good. Nandini, does that seem good? Can I get I can see you still, I just can't hear you. Can I get an okay sign? I'm not getting an okay sign. Uh-oh, maybe there's lag, maybe there's a problem. Who knows? Hi, my name is Scott Garner. This is our first time doing this. I'm also trying to kind of run this stream with this software that's a little new to me. So, oh, Nandini can hear me. Okay, everything's all good. I'm in kind of a new space that I'm setting up. It may, to the untrained eye, look like a closet, but it's actually my very sophisticated office. You can tell because there's a 3D printer here. So without further ado, I'm going to click some buttons, and hopefully I will show the right thing on screen because this is new software to me. So I'm going to click probably here, and that worked. And then I may click potentially here, and also possibly here, and that works. So we're using something called StreamYard, which is very cool. It's, for some reason, they seem to have some kind of phobia with overlapping video. So I'm going to be over here beside the video so that I don't accidentally block some important text, which is what I normally do. Hopefully this is legible. Hopefully everything is is clear enough, and then I'll post these notes after the fact. So Nandini was very flattering in her introduction of me. I'll give maybe a less flattering introduction, but the focus today is on making music, but really it's more about making things that make music, or making systems that make music. So not directly about, picking up an instrument or opening some software for composing music, but thinking about how you can make something, a set of parameters or some software or a custom instrument that plays itself, or whatever. And I will start that a little bit, maybe, well, look, here's what I said, the thing we were going to do, and we're going to do it. So this is the thing we're going to do. And something I will say about this is there are certain things don't really emerge until you've been working for a while and you kind of look at your body of work. And I don't know that I necessarily, well, look, multiple people can hear me. Great. Excellent. So it took me a while to sort of realize that some of these patterns were here. And now looking back at my portfolio, I can kind of see like a thread that starts to emerge more than 10 years ago of me interested in this certain kind of musical projects, and seeing those kind of, kind of waver around, but get hopefully a little more refined. And then with the benefit of hindsight, I can look back and be like, oh, I think this was the thing I was interested in, or this is what I was trying to do. So this is my very professional approach to slides, which is just a markdown preview. First, I want to give a little bit of background. And the main reason I do this is not because I think it's an exciting story. The main reason I do this is almost not exactly as a cautionary tale, but as a hopefully a message to anyone that's feeling certain kinds of tensions in with their creative process or what they're interested in, and hopefully reach them sooner than someone reached me, because these are things I had to kind of discover along the way. So when I was growing up, I really had two very separate paths of interest in my life, and early on it felt like they were basically fully mutually exclusive. And it seems silly to say that now, like art and tech, you say art and tech, and that's a pair. That's peanut butter and jelly now. Those are just things that go together. But when I was growing up, I didn't feel that way at all. I felt like, like, oh, I'm interested in technology. I'm interested in computers. I'm interested in taking things apart. I'm interested in learning to program. And then way over here, I'm interested in performing. I'm interested in music. I'm interested in making things, creating visual art, creating music. And I didn't have those just didn't fit together for me. And I didn't even really know that there were ways to put them together for some time, which in retrospect is a little embarrassing, but sometimes it takes a while to figure things out. So when I was in high school, for example, I spent basically all my free time in front of a computer, but at school I was in theater, and I was in choir, and I was doing creative things. And when I finished high school, I got a job with a kind of weird group of artists to do these large scale art projects. And that was part of my life. And then I had this other part of my life that was technology, and they just didn't fit together. Early in my 20s, I kind of flipped that, and I got a professional programming job, and I went and sat in front of a computer, and I worked on SQL databases and website backends all day. And that was interesting, but that meant, oh, well, now I have to go home, and at home I'm going to make music, and at home I'm going to work on visual art projects. And that was a tension that really bothered me all up through my mid-20s, really, until there was a certain point where I was like, okay, I'm tired of the programming part. I'm going to just spend some time on the creative part, the visual part. And so I went and studied at Cornish College of the Arts in Seattle. And initially just thinking I wanted to study design, and not even to be a designer. It was more like, oh, the kinds of art that I like and the way my brain works, it felt like design methodologies were the better way to do that. And so I went and did that. And while I was there, they had kind of a newish motion design program that was focused on time-based media and animation. And so I got interested in that and invested in that. And then something happened about 3/4 of the way through, maybe a little bit halfway through, but more in my junior year and senior year, I started to miss the technology part. And this program just didn't have that. I imagine now that there's processing classes in that program, or something of the sort. But oh wait, I got a message from Nandini. Is that me? Oh, you want to ask questions in private chat? Sure. Yes, that is reasonable. So I'll try to keep an eye over there. So towards the end of that time there, and we'll look at some of those projects, I kind of was thinking like, I got this assignment and I could do this assignment, but what if I made a thing that did that assignment instead, for example? And so I spent some time there. I graduated. I followed the path of that motion design degree and worked at a commercial animation studio for a while. But even there, I was like, what if we could do this? What if we could do this interactive thing? And I started doing some interactive work there. And that was the point that I decided, like, somehow it finally dawned on me about around the age of 30 that, oh, these aren't mutually exclusive things. These are actually things that you can do in tandem. And they're things that that not only can you meld, but they also, they can be ingredients in unequal measure, where you can be like, okay, this is a very visual art focused project, we're going to add a little bit of technology, or this is a very technology driven project, but we're going to have this little bit of music theory, or whatever it is. And so I started to really focus on that. And that was to do that, my kind of first step in saying like, okay, this is the thing I'm going to do. I'm going to really focus on where these things come together. I enrolled at the Interactive Telecommunications program at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, which I have mixed opinions on, but that's a topic for another day. But the focus really was for how to put those things together while I was there. And that led to a bit of an identity crisis, because I still have all these jobs and all these job titles and all these roles where I have different names. Basically everything I do, I have a different title, especially if I'm working with other people or other groups. It's like, well, sometimes maybe I'm a developer, sometimes I'm a visual effects artist, sometimes I'm an animator, sometimes whatever. And so it eventually became the big question of like, well, what do I want to call myself? What is my personal identity here? And I'd been a designer, and there's, like I mentioned before, there's things about the tools and methodologies of design, even if I'm critical and suspicious of design in many ways and its ability to manipulate people, especially in the realm of advertising. There's something about that approach to things that is a little bit more me than maybe other traditional approaches to art making, especially in the visual arts. And in terms of craft and fabrication, there's people that would call themselves makers. That's a little bit different than what I want. There's an overlap there with my kind of identity, but it's an appreciation for quality craft and for wanting to have my hands on things and wanting to build things and wanting there to be a physical component to things. And I don't mean to sound dismissive of people who identify or think of themselves as makers. To me, that's my perception of that is a little bit more like, oh, that's one of those things that's the journey is the destination. Like you tinker and that's the real thing. And that's, to me, a little separate from the sort of, okay, I have an artistic vision and I want to execute that vision. There's definitely overlap, so I don't want to sound like I'm being dismissive. And then maybe one of the more recent popular terms that is kind of so diluted that it's hard to know what it means actually, but creative technologist is what a lot of people kind of in my realm call themselves. And there's nothing wrong with that term. It's just, I find it to be not very useful, because are you a creative technologist because you make websites? Are you a creative technologist because you do embedded electronics? Are you a creative technologist because you do all of those things, because you know what an LED is? Like, and I'm not blaming individual people who use that title for themselves. I'm more blaming kind of the, I don't know, the way that's used in kind of recruiting and the corporate and commercial world. Because often they'll say creative technologist, but it's like, oh, actually, you just mean full stack web developer. Like that's what you meant to say, but you said creative technologist. So anyway, I'm interested in that realm. And again, I think I have overlap with that realm, but none of these quite fits. And you'll notice there's a term missing here. And that is musician. And it's funny because music has always been such a core part of my life, and it's something that it's been a deep part of what I've done for very long, but somehow that didn't come up in this conversation. So I listed this kind of as it occurred to me at the time. I don't know why musician doesn't occur there, other than just by this time I was making things that were more music adjacent, or these like music once removed things, where my identity as a musician, it's been close to 10 years probably since I've composed music directly. And so I've got a little lost on that, but I'm trying to loop back around to it a little bit. And so just for anyone who's curious with all that, what does that mean I actually do in practice? So in the last few years, I've done a ton of VR and AR experiences. I've done a lot of multi-user interactive experiences, and that's multiple people in the same space, or especially in the last year, multiple remote people. Interactive installations, which often helps me get that fabrication stuff in. My own independent creative works, just whatever thing I'm kind of interested in exploring. And then those things, with whom and for whom do I do them? I try to do it and want to do it more with nonprofits and museums. Very often it's with commercial studios. I have managed to kind of steer over time away from like overtly commercial work, which, early on when I was trying to pay off student loans, it was like, I'm going to do a thing with this advertising studio and I don't feel great about it, but somebody's got to pay these student loans. So I've at least kind of guided away from that a little more. And in all of this stuff, especially the stuff I do, in particular with the Children's Museum of Pittsburgh, and we'll look at some of those, I make noisy things. And I don't exactly know what to call of them. Some of them you might call sound art. Some of them you might call music making tools, which I don't like. And we'll maybe talk about that a little bit. But broadly, especially in the last 10 years, I make a lot of things that make music. And I should qualify that and say that's my definition, both of making and of music. Some people might not call the end result music, but just take it that that's my, it's got a little asterisk here that says that's my version of music. And I do want to say, as a distinction that is sometimes confusing for people, sometimes when they see the things that I make, they think that I'm making tools to make music. And that's not what I'm making. And I'll try to articulate that when we look at projects, but I'm not trying to make GarageBand or Logic or Fruity Loops, or I'm not trying to make music making software for other people to use. I broadly do not consider myself to be a tool maker. I make tools all the time, but usually those tools are for me in service of the thing I'm trying to do. And then, I try to share those tools with the world when I can and release source code on GitHub and release documentation. But I'm not a tool maker. And that's a kind of internal point of conflict, because I do like to help people and I do want to do what I can to kind of facilitate other people's creative processes, but I'm not the person that's going to make the tool that lets somebody else make the thing. Not on purpose. Sometimes that happens. And then this aspect is one of the more important aspects, is that when I design these music making systems, especially the more recent ones, they just exist until an additional ingredient is introduced. And often that additional ingredient is the agency of another human being. It's another human being is going to come up and they're going to use their bodies. Multiple human beings might tangle together and use their bodies. You might use your fingers and press buttons. So I consider myself the author of this music and the composer of this music. But in some ways, this music doesn't exist until somebody else comes up and interacts with it. And so in some ways, you could say they're a collaborator. They're not necessarily a collaborator with me. It's more like I make the system and I collaborate with the system, and then they kind of collaborate within the bounds of the system. And that's really where, if I can maybe give some advice in this realm and have developed some minor degree of expertise in this, it is really fulfilling to give people the feeling, especially kids, of that they have agency in creating music, because there's so many things about music that are hard. And you might have a block for making music because of any number of things, because of dexterity issues for playing an instrument, because of you consider yourself tone deaf, you have these labels you might apply to yourself, or you think you're not a musical person or whatever. And so it's almost, in some of these cases, a matter of like making some training wheels, or if not training wheels, at least some lanes, that if people can operate in those lanes, they can have creative agency and feel like they're doing something. And there's an invisible hand, hopefully, kind of guiding it to make sure it sounds okay. So let's look at some work. So I picked 10 projects from around the last 10 years. We're really at 12 years now. Some of these I will dwell on a little more than others. I hope you will bear with me. It always feels a little self-indulgent to just say, let's just look at all the things I've made. But hopefully there will be something in here that's useful or inspiring, or at least you'll see, like, the meandering way that I've taken to get to the things that I do, and that might be helpful. So this is my portfolio, as Nandini mentioned. It's scottmadethis.net. And this portfolio exists for me. It is a selfish thing, so I can look at it and feel like I accomplished things, and also so I can kind of have a record. So as a portfolio, it's pretty bad. But if you go all the way back here to the very first entries from 2003, they're all, it's music. These are, in fact, all of these first entries are music compositions or music recorded with a band. And I won't subject you to those things right now. Some of them I still quite like, but that was something I was interested in, particularly early in my 20s, was creating music. And then I kind of went other places and made other things and got into that design program and got into whatever else, time-based media and sculpture and books and all these other things that I wanted to explore. So that's this kind of whole era is undergrad. So you can see my terrible undergrad projects, maybe slowly, hopefully, get a little better. But the first one I want to draw your attention to, in fact, we'll take a minor detour on this one, only because this one, 2008, was maybe one of the first times that, let's see if this audio actually works. This will be a good test for that. Let me try to push this button. Maybe we'll get in trouble for playing some, and Nandini or anyone else in the chat, if you can confirm that you hear music in a moment when this starts, and hopefully it won't be too loud. Just to confirm that we are actually getting audio from the software. So this is a software tool, experience, something. Can we hear music here, maybe, hopefully? Okay, Nandini said yes. Okay, so this is not especially great, but the assignment was for a class called Type in Motion, was to do a kinetic type animation. And late 2000s, there were all of these, you've probably seen them, these animations that are just typography based, and they're based on a scene from a movie or something like that. And this was one of those times, I think it was my junior year, may have been sophomore, but I think it was junior year of undergrad. I was like, I don't want to make one of those. What if I just made software that made one of those? And so this was one of those first times when I was really, like I mentioned before, itching to kind of get some programming back in. So this was built-in processing. It actually uses this audio format from a karaoke game, I think, called SingStar. It was on a very long time ago. But the idea was like, instead of me doing these animations, what if I did this thing that would sort of real-time make these sculptures and animations with typography, just based on parsing this file and timing it to the music. And so it's not super great, but I was pretty pleased with the way it turned out. And you could give it any song that there was a karaoke file for. So it was just sort of like this sculptural karaoke visualizer. So that was kind of the first time that I was trying to dabble in there. Yeah, so it's very common to do this. And I don't have a problem with those animations. It was just a thing that I was like, I think I want to try something different. Moving a little later, you can see this, which this has a weird distinction of one being, so how to describe this? So at a certain point, like I mentioned, I was kind of feeling a little bit like, I want to get technology back in here. Actually, I would like to do some stuff with an Arduino, or write some code to do some stuff. And so there were no Arduino classes. I had no, of course there were some good online resources, but this was quite some time ago. And so I convinced, I don't know, maybe it didn't too much convincing, but basically I was able to get what was called a directed study, in which I could kind of teach myself to use an Arduino. And so I will try to play this, and you can hear this, my kind of first physical computing project. And it seems appropriate for this to be the kind of the first main project we look at, because this is a wearables festival. And so you can see my first terrible wearable. And so you're welcome to go back and watch this video, or this video where I kind of demo it. But the idea, of course, it seems very obvious, was like, oh, what if I could just play piano on any surface? And I think there's been a lot of things in this realm since then. Certainly there was prior art in this realm, but not that I had seen much of. And so I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know how to, in fact, I think none of this is soldered, because I didn't know how to solder yet. This is before an Arduino Uno. So this is actually an Arduino NG, I think was the model before the Uno, which did not have pull-up resistors. So I had to have my own pull-up resistors here, and that was fine because I thought they looked cool. But yeah, no soldering. Everything is breadboards and twisted wires because I didn't know what I was doing. And it's push buttons on the end instead of force-sensitive resistors or whatever. You could certainly, just with what you've seen in the workshop so far, you could probably think of 1,000 ways to do this better. But it was my start. You know, it was kind of my start of like, okay, how am I going to put this kind of like, I'm going to make a thing and it's going to have code and it's going to make music, and how do I put all these things together? And the funny thing about this, or my favorite story about it, is actually this video is because, so this also has the silly distinction of being the first project that I did that kind of went viral. And it was kind of before we used that term, I think. And I only knew that happened because a coworker sitting next to me at the time was in Gmail, and there were like banner advertisements at the top of Gmail that showed little news blurbs. I think it was Gmail, it might've been Twitter. Anyway, and it was like some little like, whatever, clickbaity headline about the piano gloves. And he clicked it and he was like, wait, I think you made are these your piano gloves? So anyway, they got a little bit of coverage at the time. I, of course, have never been good at capitalizing on that in any way. But the thing that was funny is I was contacted by a TV show in Japan that wanted to showcase them and asked if I would play a song for them. The issue is they're terrible. They're so limited in what they can do. I mean, I have 10 fingers here. 10 is not a number that fits with, if you're looking for ways to just extract individual notes, and if you're gonna have a static set of notes, 10 is a little bit of a weird number there. And so it may have just been tuned. I don't think it was C major. I forget what the tuning was. At any rate, it was very limited and could not even play. I think maybe I did the semitones, but I couldn't play a full octave of semitones because there's 12. Anyway, it was not very flexible, but it just happened by pure happenstance that whatever notes that I chose, and again, it escapes me now, happened to exactly fit the Japanese national anthem perfectly. Like every note just happened to be there and it worked perfectly. So I did this very silly, lightweight performance of, I think it's Kimigayo. I may be pronouncing that wrong. So this was my first start of this thing before I knew what I was doing at all. And not that I especially know what I'm doing now, but I definitely didn't know what I was doing here. And the main reason I want to show this is if I can do this, especially then with like no idea of what I was doing, I was like, I ordered an Arduino on the internet. I'm going to just try to figure this out. Like, you have the capability to figure these things out. And especially this was paired with processing is what I actually used to trigger the audio here. I assume most people watching here are familiar with processing and P5. If not, and if you're feeling either that conflict, like, oh, I'm an artist, I don't know how to program, or I'm a programmer, I don't know how to make art, always encourage people who are feeling that tension to go check out processing, check out P5, because the kind of original conceit, even before processing, even with John Maida's Design by Numbers, was that there shouldn't be tension there, and you should be able to put those things together. So yes, a very early processing sketch, and a few random other things and some push buttons is all that was. So let's move forward in the future a bit. Lots more grad school stuff, which music played a role in a number of these things, but I'm going to try to skip to just the things that seem especially relevant. I will take a slight detour with this one. This is a game that is now unfortunately defunct when Apple got rid of all 32-bit software, and I do not have the wherewithal to go revisit this code base and make it 64-bit. I only mention this because there's an important adage that I almost would put this on my tombstone, is the idea that just because you like something doesn't mean you like to do it. And so I'm a person that likes video games and interactive experiences like that. And so I thought like, oh, I should make a musical video game because it's obvious. I mean, I like to make musical things and I like to make video games. So I won't talk much about this other than to point out, I thought it was kind of a fun thing to make. I don't think it was that fun to play, but just honesty with yourself, I think, is an important trait as you move through these things. And, you know, along with all the other stuff you'll hear a million times, like it's okay to fail. It's okay to like, you're going to suck before you're good at anything. And that's just the way it goes. But also, you know, there's a certain point where you just have to be honest with yourself and be like, you know what? I put some time into this. I gave it a fair chance. Maybe this isn't for me, whatever that thing is. So for me, it was, I'm going to make a video game. I've made tons of interactive experiences in video game engines since then, but I don't know that I've made a thing, maybe one thing with a score since then. So in some ways, it was like a broadening of horizons to realize like, oh, I can do these things and they don't have to be games. They don't have to have a score. You don't have to win. So just a slight diversion for that thing. as we follow the musical thread through my work. The next big thing, and this one's a little bit of a weird one, but this one is a musical project called the Beatbox, which again, I don't know, looking back, it seems so simple almost 10 years later, and even a little silly. A little bit of video play. So hopefully you can hear that. It's exactly what it seems like, which is a silly pun. But I don't know, if you look at the looks on everybody's faces, it seems like they're pretty into it. And I don't think it's because it sounded especially good. And I don't think it's just because of the bad joke or the not very good audio. I think it was, or what I endeavored to create was something a little bit magical. And so this was very much in a realm of, I'll pause it so you don't have to hear my bad audio samples, of a realm that I was exploring in Stilic's work called invisible technology, where you put something in front of people that is in some ways a sophisticated piece of electronics or has sophisticated computation going on under the hood, and you try to hide all of that behind natural materials. And you may have heard me give talks before about my opinions on that and about humans liking real things and natural things and not this world of plastic that I'm surrounded with right now. There's just like black plastic. It's everywhere. Everywhere is just black plastic all around me. And I hope we're moving away from that. And so, and from the workshops today, hopefully you got to see that, like, oh, you can, lots of things that are metal or capacitive. So you can use those for, or conductive. And so you can use those in capacitive circuits. So that was really the key here. As far as like the music part of it, it was really just the pun. I don't think there was anything great. You can certainly look, this is a project that was another one that got a fair amount of attention, mainly I think because it was a very early Raspberry Pi project. At the time, there just weren't a ton of Raspberry Pi projects. And so it uses Raspberry Pi. It's got an Arduino in there. I think this is the whole guts. In fact, I think I switched from the Arduino at one point to use the GPIO pins on the Raspberry Pi. I made a little custom amp that has a little capacitive touch sensor. So it's capacitive touch, just like if you've been following along with the other workshops, it's that same technology. It's just hooked into another thing that happens to be conductive, which is fruits and vegetables. Capacitance changes on fruits and vegetables, especially depending on how wet they are. But it worked fine. And in terms of the audio, I think I just had a very simple Python. There should be a link here somewhere. Yeah, some very simple Python Pygame code to trigger some audio samples. So that was kind of my next step. This was done at ITP, where I was very much focused on this very specific like synthesis of skills. So I built that. That's a hand fabricated enclosure that I built that enclosure, and I built and soldered all of the components except for the Raspberry Pi, of course, which came by itself. I did not grow the beats. I will admit that. I probably could have grown the beats. Skipping a little further ahead, let's skip to this. So this was my first residency at the Children's Museum of Pittsburgh, and this is a piece called Reach. And this was much more of that idea of invisible technology, just kind of at a bigger scale. So this was kind of the follow-up to the Beatbox in some ways. Let's make a bigger thing. Let's try different materials. Let's try different techniques. I'll play my very self-indulgent fabrication video while I talk a little bit. But I really enjoyed it because it really let me explore a lot of fabrication techniques. So I was in the shop. I was building the cabinetry. I went and got to rent some time on an industrial water jet cutter to cut these aluminum stars. I did all the software and circuitry and all of those things. And the end result, which, how long is this video? Do you want to sit through this whole thing? We'll watch it. We'll watch it a little longer. The end result was not capacitive touch, which still continues to confuse people. This is still on show at the museum, which I'm very flattered by. It was at the Pittsburgh International Airport for a while. I could probably make this bigger, huh? And, but this is not a capacitive circuit. It is a resistive circuit. And so the idea here is not that you touch a single thing to trigger a sound, but instead that you have to make connections to make the sounds happen. And I think what was really important to me about this and this particular approach is, I don't think we can, there's a little test after this. We'll skip the, yes, the very exciting thing. So the idea is that you have to touch the moon and a star, but you don't have to do it directly. You can hold hands with somebody and they can touch the star, because with it, basically there's a, I don't know, 1 million ohm resistor, maybe 6 million ohm resistor. And given the option between going through a 6 million ohm resistor and a human body, electrons are going to pick a human body, because the resistance of a human is more, I forget, maybe a human resistance is more 600 kilo ohms. I don't remember exactly, but it's less than the resistors that were in here. And so the thing about this that I think that I unfortunately I don't think I have proper video for, which is unfortunate. I need to get some more documentation from the museum, is that you touch I think my ridiculous video here will show it. You touch the moon, you touch a star, it plays a tone. The stars are tuned in such a way that they will always play something kind of musical together. But yeah, I think you can see this. Yeah. So touching the moon, touch a star, but then, let's see, I think I get slightly more adventurous. We'll skip ahead a little. So I have an elbow on the moon and a hand on the star. I can smash my face against a star and it will play. So what to me was a success about this, insofar as it was a success, is that one of the biggest challenges of making work for the Children's Museum is that you never know. Is it going to be one kid is going to run up, one child? Is it going to be a child and a parent? Is that child going to be 2 years old or 8 years old? Is there going to be a school group with 20 kids? And so it is honestly almost impossible, and I've definitely tried, to design something that accommodates all of those scenarios. And in general, the museum, you don't have to. You can make an exhibit and have individual components in that exhibit cater to different age groups or different levels of motor skill and so on. But I really wanted to try to do it all in this piece. And so if a group of school kids, 20 school kids, can run up to this pre-COVID era and grab each other's arms and still be able to touch all the stars, or a parent with a child can touch it, or somebody that for some reason has mobility issues, anything like that, you can find a way to, in a wheelchair, roll them up close. So try to make it very accessible in terms of age, in terms of physical ability, in terms of number of people. And I think it worked pretty well. And I think it's, in terms of being a musical instrument, it's very simple. I think it's just C major in a couple of octaves, so that it always will a chord will always emerge. I have better ways that I would probably do this now, eight years later, but I think it turned out pretty well. And so that is maybe my first musical tip. If you're making these musical things and you don't know very much about music, and you don't know you don't understand musical notation, you can't read sheet music, if you can just learn a major triad, just basically like a C major chord, and learn what that means and how to play it, those 3 notes will sound good in a series. They will sound good when you play them together. If you do it in 2 octaves, I should have grabbed a keyboard. I don't have a keyboard within reach. If you do it in 2 octaves, it's always going to sound good. So anyway, if that's the one musical thing you take away, C major, you can almost never go wrong. Unless you want it to be sad, then do a C minor. And maybe we'll mention that a little more as we go further along. Next piece, kind of in that realm, is a sculptural piece, and so kind of scaled back down. And this one, the idea was, this is still kicking around in my mind, but I sort of wanted to make these, they're almost like robots with agency of their own, because so many of the things that we make now are, digital assistants that can never talk back to you, and these various, these kind of robots that go around and clean up after you, and so on. These very, I don't mean to sound dismissive of this when I say it, but that are kind of subservient technologies. They're technologies that are sometimes great and can be assistive, especially in accessibility realms, but sometimes they're a little like self-indulgent and a little bit lazy, like, yeah, the Roomba will get it. And so I wanted to create some technologies that just sort of did their own thing. So these are 2 music making sculptures that don't have speakers. And so the idea internally is that they are making their own music for themselves based on just the way anybody would make music. They perceive the world around them and they turn it into music. The issue is they only have one sense each. So this is Argus, and Argus has an array of photocells. And so Argus can see in all directions, just like the mythical Argus. And Heimdallr has an antenna in this center shaft, so Heimdallr can hear. And Heimdallr in Norse mythology could hear the grass grow and things like that. And so I'll play you a little bit of these. They're a little bit intense, but it was very much about ebbing and flowing of stimulus. So the Argus sample you will hear is lights passing over or lights changing or shadows crossing. And it's a little ethereal and it's probably very loud. So forgive me if this comes through very loudly. So this is powered on, lights are coming up, and then each of these faces, each of these eyes has a different sense of light and dark and will respond to that stimulus by sort of interpolating to another tone, again in a carefully constructed chord, so it always should sound musical. But in this case, I wanted to give the agency to the device to some extent. And so now that I say that, I think this one was pretty artificial because I'm pretty sure I had my phone flashlight and was shining my phone flashlight. But if this was just in a space, as lights turned on and off, as people walked by and cast shadows, this sort of internal sort of funeral song would develop. And again, as designed, there were no speakers, so this was happening internally. You had to be kind of allowed a listening if you wanted to hear. And then Heimdallr listens to Wi-Fi, and it's a little bit nightmarish. So this is on Broadway in Manhattan, 12th floor, near a bit north of Houston Street, kind of Sodo. Got it. And so it is very haunting as these voices come in and out. So this is what Wi-Fi sounds like to Heimdallr. And so again, the idea of kind of trying to give some agency to a system to play music. And then that really led to what is in some ways maybe my most successful exploration in this realm, but it's also very on the nose. And it's maybe the one that is closest to creating an instrument. So I'll just play this because hopefully it's easier to understand what's going on if I just play the demo video. Hopefully you can hear that okay. We'll in the interest of time, I will stop it. You're welcome to go download this. So this is available on iPhone and iPad. It has not been updated in a while, so your phone notch may get in the way. But the idea was to build a system. I'll skip to the end of the kind of a fully formed or more fully formed song. So the idea was to create what I call a nonlinear sequencer, which is just gives you a whole bunch of ingredients that when combined together you have a huge amount of agency to create what you want to create, but it really tries to keep it on the rails. So this maybe leans a little more in that realm of a musical tool, but I don't think of it that way. I wanted to build a system that I could use to experiment and then released that system. But and I still like this project very much. The only downside with where I am now in kind of my creative practice is that it is so, it's screen space and it's very on the nose. So we'll kind of shift forward in the future a little bit. I realize we're a little low on time, so I will. In that doc that I link, I'll put a few more links to some other projects, because I did do some more kind of sculptural, large-scale, sound-based murals that were musical for the Children's Museum. Did do some more software that is kind of like sculptural. This is kind of a drawing music app, also available for iPad. You're welcome to go download. It's called Ostinato. The idea is sort of you connect the dots to create music. And then, oh no, that's the big reveal. I just spoiled it. And then I actually would like to show a little bit of volume 1. Let me show this very briefly, because this is a thing that is imminent. It will be out very soon. In fact, you can download the kind of beta version from the Android store right now. But it is a series of sort of sculptural, well, sculpture is a weird way to put it because it's screen-based, but I think of them almost as sculptures of musical studies, of little kind of interactive studies to create music with different, very non-traditional interfaces. So you're absolutely welcome to go download this for free on Android, and it is coming to iOS soon. It's called Volume 1. There's currently 7, I think. 7 variations in here. This one might be my favorite. So this one is this might be too quiet. Let me turn it up a little bit. This, sort of looks like a traditional sort of step sequencer or piano roll, but at any time you can swipe and change the direction of it and play the music on a different axis, or you can reverse it and play the other way or play it up. So there's a series of kind of different musical explorations here of experimental interfaces, very tight, very, very, very simple, but hopefully an interesting thing to download and play with. It was very much a way for me to kind of just get some of these ideas out in terms of experimental musical interfaces. So please, you are very invited to go download that. A few other, some more sculptural things for the Children's Museum. I'll try to get some better documentation on there and link to that. But the thing I wanted to end on is what I've been working on most recently. And in fact, this isn't on my site yet because I just got that from Pittsburgh a little over a week ago. And so I'm kind of still in the process of documentation. But this is a control panel made for an exhibit based on the Pixar movie Inside Out. And if you've seen the film, you know that the control panel is made to control the emotions of the lead character. And so to me, I was like, we have to make that, and I want it to make music. And so I feel like I could do a whole talk just on this thing, and maybe I will at some point because it is enormously complex. First, I should say this was made in collaboration with the Children's Museum. The fabrication you're seeing was largely done by one of their fabricators named Ricky Colling, who's amazing, and I will have full documentation on that. So I can't take credit for these custom mechanisms he machined. But the underlying design of this, I'll just play a little bit of video so you can see that in some ways this is kind of a culmination of these other things that I've been talking about, where you can sit down, have what just looks like a bunch of knobs and dials controls, and anybody, a child of any age, can hopefully sit at this and music will come out. I'm going to skip ahead a little just to see all the controls. You've seen most of them at this point, though. So I don't need to, you don't have to watch a whole YouTube video, of course. Once the documentation here is, you are welcome to go watch this video. But just to kind of summarize, and I really should give another talk on this. I realized I talked too much about the old work this time. That always happens. The challenge here, again, is there could be one kid that's going to run up and bang on it. There could be a family. There could be a group of students. And I try to accommodate all of those kids. So as they run up and bang on it, you should be able to have fun things happen. But what I really was aiming for with this one is a certain patient kind of visitor that wants to play with everything. So there's lots of it is one of the most complicated circuitry setups I've ever designed. Pretty complicated in terms of it runs on Teensies, by the way. So it's probably the most complicated embedded microcontroller code I've ever written. And one of the most challenging kind of UX problems I've ever tackled, because there's just so many things you can touch and do. And if you want them all to make music, so you have certain things that are using rotary encoders that operate within a range and operate in a certain scale. You have rotary encoders that are using the velocity to play instruments at different speeds. When you press those buttons, you notice I was kind of changing a fundamental underlying chord to represent those underlying emotions of joy and happy and sadness. And so anyway, I should have it done already, but I don't. But very soon I will hopefully have this documentation up. So I think I will just end it, Nandini, since I talked so long anyway, so I can tell everybody where to go. So first of all, thank you anybody who watched live, and thank you in the YouTube chat. Thank you for the compliment, Allison. I appreciate that. So anything you want to know, you should be able to go to CETI.institute. You can join the mailing list there. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel where this all hopefully streamed perfectly without any errors. There is, if you go to the Enchanted Tech link here, I believe there is a link to the Discord. Am I mistaken? Oh no, is there not a Discord link here? Sorry, Nandini, can you send me the Discord or tell me where to go to send them to the Discord if they're not there? So there is a CETI Discord. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I can never tell when I talk about these things. I feel silly now because I spent a lot of time talking about the old stuff that wasn't as good and then rushed to the other thing. Anyway, so thank you very much for those of you sticking around. Somewhere there is a link to get to Discord. Okay, if you just send an email to hello@ceti.institute. Oh yes, right here. If you just send an email here, you can get an invite to the Discord. So, and definitely stay tuned over the next few days in this place, wherever you are watching. I assume it's on YouTube, kind of has to be on YouTube. There will be more talks. I think there's a schedule here that may or may not be fully up to date. If not, it will be. So there will be some more talks that happen, and definitely join the Discord. Definitely please subscribe on YouTube, because we have to reach 1,000 subscribers one of these days so that we can live stream a little more easily and have some more perks. So Nandini, is there anything else that you would like to relay, or I can just stop it now? I can just vamp a little bit. Yeah, so I will post this documentation, the talk that I was giving. I'll post it on GitHub. I'll make these actual links and link to some of the software. Generally in my documentation, it talks about the tools that I use and things like that. You're also very free to ask me questions. Okay, I'm going to switch to Nandini now. So let's see if I do this correctly. I will try to push all the proper buttons. So thank you again for joining. I really appreciate it. And here is Nandini.
Hello all. This is strange for me, so apologies, and thank you, Scott, for this amazing talk. Scott will be around. You've seen him lurking in the lab helping us with streaming, so go talk to him, and we'll be part of the show. And also, yes, send email to hello@ceti.institute for a link. I'm never quite sure whether I should put links on the internet and who will end up on the site. Eventually, I will stop being that sort of paranoid cryptographer, but for now, that's how it is. But thank you for this really inspiring talk, and I think all of you can see why this was perfect to lead off. It's sort of the process of getting to these projects. And I really love that it's not about the technology, it's about the experience for the person who gets to be part of it, and that the technology is invisible. I say this as we think of it as technology as being so messy and full of wires and cable and duct tape, and this is just beautiful. So thank you. Scott can stay on for a while and answer questions or chat if you want to, but also jump on the Discord. He'll be on there for the next couple of days and really longer, forever, really. So thank you, and I will happily disappear off screen now.
Okay, wait, it's me again. So if anybody does, I will stay on a little bit longer. I'm glad to. I've realized my very sophisticated office that I'm in is also really hot, it turns out, when I close the door. So I feel like I'm super gross now. You've probably just watched me kind of slowly wither and melt. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or any other things you want to look at, or I can just be quiet and go out of this room where it's not 200 degrees. Happy to either way. Or Nandini, if you have any questions or anything you think I should revisit or touch on that I glossed over. How did it get so hot in this tiny room? I blame this PC. Yeah, sure. Actually, I think that's a great idea. I think I would like to do that, and hopefully I'll have better documentation by then. So that final project, Nandini suggested that we do a follow-up talk. If I can find my own website. Oh yeah, that's the secret website that's not published yet. Can I push this button again? Anyway, yes, that final control panel, I can certainly discuss that. And at some point I would like to do, some kind of talk where we can talk about some of the tools that I use, and maybe some of the tricks that I do. So, okay. Oh, that's interesting. The question came on the screen. I didn't know that was the thing that would happen. Well, now we know that we can have questions on the screen. Okay, so I'm going to end this. I'm going to push the button that ends the broadcast, and hopefully this all worked. Thanks everybody for joining again, and again, visit CETI.institute. Okay, I will be quiet. Goodbye.